So Mike Sloan and Healy Sutton, who gabbide this complicated Torah service, Haftorah service, Yisher Koch to both of you. Thank you so much. That was truly awesome. You all have to know, when this room is like, when you all are singing, when it's like whatever it is we're singing together, what we feel up here is extraordinary.
True.
I hope you feel it there too. I really do. All right. So a few days ago, I was sitting at breakfast and my son Amos, my 6-year-old, he looked up at me and he said, "Daddy, I'm going to tell you a joke." I said, "Okay." He said, "Daddy, imagine you are stuck inside of a sealed box. How will you get out?" I said, "I'm going to use my imaginary scissors and cut myself out." And he looks at me and he says, "Nope. Just stop imagining you are in the box."
Wow.
Touche.
Oh, that was awesome. That was the best.
There's a story in the Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Tanit, about a rabbi. His name was Elazar ben Padat. He lived in the land of Israel in the 3rd century CE. Rabbi Elazar had a very difficult life. He was always very poor. He experienced considerable loss. To survive was to struggle. So the story goes, once an act of bloodletting was performed on him. Bloodletting was classic ancient medicine, if there was such a thing. Letting the blood out of one's body, they believed, could serve as a form of preventative medicine if done in moderation. Rabbi Elazar was into bloodletting. The problem was that this day after he bloodlet, he didn't have anything to eat afterwards, and he was afraid that he would pass out. So what he did was he grabbed a clove of garlic and he shoved it in his mouth. And he passed out anyway. So later on that day, a few of his friends came to check up on him. They knew that he was going to perform this surgery on himself, and they knew that he had passed out. That's Aramaic, for they saw him weeping and laughing at the same time. And they also saw that there was a ray of light coming out of his forehead, which is totally normal. They asked him, "Rabbi Elazar, why are you laughing and crying?" And he said, "Well, God came to me in my dream. God sat with me after I passed out while I was sleeping. And so I took that opportunity to ask God a question. God, when will my suffering end? What is the plan?" So God replies to Rabbi Elazar, "My child, would you like me to go back to the beginning and recreate you? Perhaps this time your life will turn out differently. Perhaps, my child, you will not end up in a life in which you suffer so much." I'm going to pause the story right here. It gets better, but it's one of those stories where you have to stop every once in a while and use it as a mirror before getting to the end. The question that God asks, would you like a do-over? Would you like a make-up life, a cosmic mulligan? It's an unavoidable game that our minds play. What if? What if I was recreated in this way? As you see or hear or read me now, but in every place that I turned right, I could go back and I could turn left. What would I be? Who would I be? With whom might I be surrounded? The self-help industry exclaims, "Don't dwell in the past, it's over, it's done with. Just imagine that there's no box." We have one life, this one. To dwell in the impossible is a distortion of reality at best, a total illusion at worst, and ultimately something that could deeply fossilize us. Maybe. But before dismissing a ubiquitous phenomenon that each of us experiences easily and often, and if you're shaking your head and saying, I'm not me, I don't say what if, it's Yom Kippur. I don't believe you. On Yom Kippur, we are bidden to say the quiet parts of our lives out loud. On Yom Kippur, we say the quiet parts out loud. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. What if, when my parents divorced, I had gone to live with my dad, like my older brother did? What would I be today? What if my mom, what if she wouldn't have had the courage to move us from everything we knew in the world in Indiana to Florida when I was in 8th grade? What would I be today? What if I had taken that job after college instead of picking up and moving to Israel to study in yeshiva? What would I be today? What if my end of college until beginning of rabbinical school longtime girlfriend and I hadn't had that one conversation we'd always avoided and stayed together? What if? With whom would I be today? What if I had met the expectation to go to rabbinical school in New York and not ended up in Los Angeles, thank God? What would I be today? What if when that Los Angeles pulpit rabbi called me in to offer me a job as his potential successor, what if I had accepted? What would I be today? What if the 2015 Aaron listened to the very, very stubborn 2012 Aaron, who vowed to never, ever, ever work in a pulpit? 2012 Aaron was not easy to be around all the time. Very stubborn. Where would I be today? Who would I be today? What would I be today? What if, when Rabbi Holtzblatt called in 2015, the two of us having never met one another, but definitely crossing paths many times, what if, when she asked me to come teach on a cold Tuesday night in the Biran Beit Midrash from Macomb, DC, what if I would have just had the common sense to say, sorry, too much traveling for 1.5 hours of teaching? Where would I be today? Who would I be? What would I be? What if my friend and classmate, Rabbi Yolkut, who's been up here on the bima with us today, what if she and her wife Stephanie had never moved to DC and had not been here that night to welcome me alongside Rabbi Holtzblatt and David to help me feel immediately at home? Where might I be today? What if you all would have listened to your brains and not your hearts and taken that leap for 2 senior rabbis instead of following the 145-year-old Addis Israel history of hiring just one? Where would I be today? What if I wouldn't have shared all of these personal life moments with you today on Yom Kippur? I'm okay. And it's not only the personal, the individual. There are global events like the pandemic, which force us to communally ask ourselves, where would we be if? What would this congregation look like today if, without the past 2 years, would so many people be with us virtually as part of the community? And they are. Thank you for being here, enjoying holidays together or family smachot on Shabbat. I often think or hope maybe that world leaders will ask themselves the what if questions on a regular basis. What if I had not let my ego push me into attacking that sovereign nation unprovoked? What if the tables were turned? What if I had tried to make that policy claim that I wanted to make without resorting to racism? What if I had remembered to turn off my camera? What if it had been my child in that school? What if? They are never ending. Research shows that adults make 35,000 decisions, a day. You make 35,000 decisions on average a day. That's 13 million decisions a year. and 127 million decisions in 10 years. You are all more productive than you thought you are. If there was ever a question with an infinite labyrinth of permutations, this is it. So I don't want to dismiss it. It is a phenomenon that each of us experience. We do very often. And today, on Yom Kippur, we say the quiet parts out loud. That's the work of this day. In December 2020, at the height of the first COVID winter wave, the ideas editor at The New Yorker, Jonathan Rothman, wrote an article titled, "What If You Could Do It All Over Again?" It was a response 1,800 years later to the haunting question that God asked Rabbi Elazar. We may imagine specific unlived lives for ourselves, he writes at the beginning of his essay, but I now have a life, a world, a story. I'm me, not him, whoever he might have turned out to be. For some of us, imagining lives unlived is torture, a gateway to crisis. And honestly, this feels true to me. Whenever I start to live in the what if I had, a burst of shame comes forth. And I imagine you have felt that too. And then I say to myself, are you not satisfied with what you have? And then I say to myself, count your blessings. And then I say to myself, why are you thinking about this at all? It's done, it's over. Just stop imagining that you are in the box. And then Rothman complicates things. And this is where it gets interesting. He continues, as Sartre says, we are who we are. But isn't the negative space in the portrait part of the portrait? In the sense that our unled lives have been imagined by us and are a part of us, they are real. To know what someone isn't, what she might have been, what she's dreamed of being, this is to know somebody intimately. When we first meet people, we know them as they are, but with time, we perceive the auras of possibility that surround them. It's no wonder that for many of us, the stories of our lives become the stories of the lives we were prevented from living. Human beings, claim Rothman, are more than their tangible reality. We are, each of us, a melting pot of space and negative space, what is and what might have been. In other words, to reduce our unactualized dreams, to erase our potential right turns when we went left, as if they don't materialize into something real that limits the power of what our consciousness can hold. Everything is in here. You hear us say this a lot. Everything is in here. Philosopher and neuroscientist Dr. Michal de Mandasa expresses this well, if also a bit opaquely. She says, is a thought more like driving or more like the car? Is a thought process or is it parts? Both definitions have merit. A parts definition of a thought, where a thought is tangible, well, you just have to look at what is required for a thought to happen. You need neurons, electrical signals, neurochemicals, blood flow, all of those things, parts. A process definition, though, is more precise, and it allows us to include all the physical parts in a more elegant way. The moving parts, that which is noticeably embodied, like blood, are included in the process of our thinking, but they are not the thought themselves. That is, we can say blood flow is included without saying blood flow is itself the thought. What does that mean? Am I in the box or not? We are connected to our thoughts in a physical way. They are process and parts combined. They're real in as much as they are absolutely embedded in us and connected to everything physical about us, blood and breath, but also they are teetering on the intangible, which makes them hard to precisely define and even harder to figure out what to do with them when they pop up and maybe hold us back and maybe even fossilize us. Do we store them away or do we release them? Do we hide them or reveal them? Do we ignore them or integrate them? Okay, back to Rabbi Elazar ben Padat. Remember where we left off. God in his dream offers Rabbi Elazar a brand new start with potentially different outcomes. Rabbi Elazar responds to God's question with a question. Efshar demit yaldat b'sha'ata dimzune. He says, so the offer is that you'll recreate me in a different time and place, and there's a possibility my life will get better. There's no guarantee it will be better. God is rolling God's eyes now. And before God can respond, Rabbi Elazar, who has a ton of chutzpah, asks another question. He says, God, are my remaining days in this life shorter than what I've already lived? Which is to say, have I lived half my life yet? Do I have more years left than I have already had? God says, you have. You've lived more than half your life. Amre lakame. Rabbi Elazar responds back, Im kain lo ba'ina. In that case, I'm good. I will stay in this life that I have now. And then God, apparently happy with his answer, offers him a reward. 13 rivers of pure balsam oil as large as the Euphrates and the Tigris to enjoy after he dies in the world to come. So Rabbi Elazar, chutzpah and all, comes back. He says, really, God, that's it? That's all you're going to give me? You're going to give me 13 balsam oil jars? And when I'm dead? And God says, well, I need some more to give to your colleagues. You're not the only one who needs a reward in the world to come. And Rabbi Elazar comes back and he says, come on, you're God, you're master of the world. If you can create 13, you can create as many as you want. And in that moment, God snaps God's fingers on Rabbi Elazar's head and exclaims, Elazar, my son, my arrows I cast upon your head, my arrows I cast upon your head. And he wakes up from his dream, and he is laughing and he is crying, and there is a beam of light coming out of his forehead where God casts God's arrows. Talmudic stories are incredible. There's a lot to unpack here. But in doing so, in taking a moment to do it, we receive, if we are open to it, a deep textured lesson on how to manage our what-ifs as they pop up into our lives. Keep in mind, whether this story about a dream actually happened is neither here nor there. The rabbinic authors, whoever they may have been, wherever they may have been, carefully crafted it to impart upon the readers, you and me, a lesson about human existence. Rabbi Elazar dreams of another life, and in this dream he owns, without shame, that he might even prefer some other potential outcomes, if not all of them. But upon further reflection, he decides to live in the life he currently inhabits. To do it all over again would only create another life in which new what-ifs would be born, thousands and thousands of them a day. The uncertainty of what might happen if given the chance to do it all over again simply does not compel him to leave that which he has now, even though what he has now hardly ever feels like enough. But it wasn't that he had nothing, because remember how the story begins. He passes out, and his friends, his colleagues, come to visit him. They are worried about his welfare. Rabbi Elazar determines to transcend his what-if, and for that, the light implanted within him at creation bursts forth. He stops imagining he is in a box without pretending his imagined box isn't also a part of who he is. He can do both at once. Professor Barbara Jaffe wrote in an article devoted to this topic, What If and What Could Have Been. She said, maybe, just maybe, I had to hear the whispers of fear. So now that I am growing old, I can say, yes, I heard them, and even listen to the words of dread that deterred me at times from the path I could have taken. Here on Yom Kippur, we confront our what-ifs together. Courageously, quietly, and loudly, regret without shame, and respond with resolution to take one step at a time in the life we currently inhabit. We respond both laughing and crying, and we have been doing all of that together. We respond light bursting forth, pouring out of each of us with the final words of Unatana Tokef, which we will do shortly. Tefillah, tshuva, utzdaka, ma'avirin et roa hagazera, prayer, repentance, and charity, gazing upward, returning inward, facing outward. These cannot erase all that was. They can't erase or prevent the decree to come, our tradition asserts, but what they can do, they can aid us in capturing the present without lessening the burden of an unknown past. Dr. Eric Fromm wrote, to hope means to be ready at every moment for that which is not yet born, To hope means to be ready at every moment for that which is not yet born, but not become desperate if there is no birth in our lifetime. To hope for that which is not born, but not become desperate if there is no birth in our lifetime. To choose what's in front of us. To choose what's in front of us doesn't have to mean pretending what never was isn't a part of us too, or even unworthy of our thoughts. It just means we recognize, like Rebbe Elazar, that what still might be is a more compelling vision for our future than what if. To choose this life, and I very much do, with you all. To choose this life is to wake up from our dreams and step by step, wheel by wheel, inch by inch, co-create the best version of ourselves possible here on this earth, in this time, in this life, bringing all that is with us, process and parts, along for the journey. What if? What if we can do that together? Gemar Chatima Tova.